Okay, so next up, I'm going to be grading some of the most notable signings from day one of free agency. We're going to start off with Russell Wilson signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I give this move a B. I'm going to be honest. As a Steeler fan, when I first saw the news that we had signed Russell Wilson, I wasn't happy with it. But when the contract details came out and revealed that he's only going to be getting paid $1.12 million for just this season, I couldn't be upset with it. How can you be upset with it when Russell Wilson signed the deal that's paying him less than the majority of backups in the league? This is a low-risk, high-reward kind of signing. Yes, Russell Wilson may be washed and he is regressing. He's on the older end of 30. But if he can somewhat be decent for Pittsburgh and be better than what they've gotten out of the quarterback position in the past, and he can put up similar numbers to what he did in Denver last season, this could be a pretty good signing because you got this dude for nuts and peanuts pretty much. And Kenny Pickett is obviously not good enough to be a starter in this league. So no matter what, you upgraded at quarterback. It may not be a tremendous upgrade, but you got better at a premium position where you're pretty much paying only $1 million to a dude like Russell Wilson that is a Pro Bowler. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's one of the best quarterbacks of this past decade, and he's not what he used to be. But Mike Tomlin is one of those coaches that he knows how to get the most out of players that may be viewed as past their prime. And Russell Wilson, with his personality, I think he'll get along better with Mike Tomlin than what he did with Sean Payton. So I give the move a B, low risk, high reward potentially. And even if Russell Wilson does suck and the Steelers end up having the first losing season ever under Mike Tomlin, I still would be happy because maybe we'll be in a position where we could draft Shedeur Sanders next year or maybe trade up for him. But I have no problem with the Steelers signing Russell Wilson. I give it a B grade. The Atlanta Falcons signed Kirk Cousins. Now, when it came out that he was hitting free agency, it pretty much was set in stone that he was going to Atlanta. And Atlanta, they gave him an offer that he couldn't pass up. $100 million fully guaranteed, 4-year deal for $180 million. You knew no way in hell the Minnesota Vikings were going to give him that much guaranteed money. This was a huge swing for the Atlanta Falcons, a big dice roll for them. But I think it's one that should pay off. Yes, he is older in age. He's like on his lower half of 30s, but he still is somebody who can give you really good quarterback play. He is coming off that Achilles injury, but at worst, he'll be a top 18, top 19 quarterback, which is way better than what you've gotten out of your recent quarterback play the last 2 seasons. Marcus Mariota sucked. Desmond Ridder sucked. Kirk Cousins, even if he isn't the same as what he was prior to that Achilles injury, he still should be better than what you've had in the past. And you can still win a division with a Kirk Cousins that may be a little bit worse than what he was last year. Now, if you get the Kirk Cousins that we saw before that injury, when he was playing at an MVP level, when he absolutely lit up the 49ers defense in prime time, not only are the Falcons a lock to win the NFC South, but they could possibly be a team that could make a surprising deep run in the playoffs next year. Kirk Cousins played some of the best football of his career in 2023. If he picks up from where he left off with Atlanta, with the weapons that they have, and the fact that that defense is going to be improved also, I'm not saying they could be a Super Bowl contender, but they definitely could be one of those teams that they make it to the playoffs, they win a playoff game or two, and nobody even sees it coming. Kirk Cousins, I give it a B grade. You know, I would give it an A minus, but it's just, you did give him a lot. $100 million guaranteed, 180 over 4 years. Like, that's a lot for a guy who's this old, coming off this big of an injury. But if he ends up panning out, then it definitely would be money well spent. One thing about Kirk Cousins, he definitely knows how to get what he's asking for. Like, he wanted what he wanted. Minnesota wasn't budging. He went to Atlanta and got it. He just knows how to get the bag. Can't hate on that. DeAndre Swift was signed by the Chicago Bears. They are signing him to a 3-year deal worth $24 million. Can you believe that there were people saying that this was a bad move by Chicago? All because it wasn't Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs or Derrick Henry? Like, listen, DeAndre Swift is a really good running back. And to get him at this value, I had to give you a B+ grade, bro. Like, DeAndre Swift is really underrated. Yes, he has had a history with injuries and durability concern, but last year, he didn't really miss too much time with injuries. And when the Philadelphia Eagles offense was at its best before they ended up falling off in the second half of the season, their offense was running through DeAndre Swift. When that offense ran through DeAndre Swift, that was a really effective and efficient offensive attack that they had. But when they got away from DeAndre Swift and he started relying more on Jalen Hurts and him throwing the football to win, that's when they got themselves in really bad situations. The Chicago Bears, you're getting a running back that is really good in the passing game. He has really good hands out of the backfield. He also is one of those running backs that is going to average at least 4.5 yards, nearly 5 yards per carry. And there was somebody trying to say that, well, he's not good after contact. He ranked 11th in the NFL this past season in yards after initial contact, ahead of guys like Isaiah Pacheco. This is a really underrated free agency signing. And I think that DeAndre Swift is super underappreciated, and not enough people give him enough credit for the year that he had in 2023 at Philadelphia. Like, he was really good during the first half of the season. I had this dude on all of my fantasy teams. He pretty much saved my fantasy football season because I had nobody at running back until I picked him up in round 6 or 7, and he was a stud. Yes, he did benefit from how good the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is, but at the end of the day, DeAndre Swift going to Chicago is a tremendous find and a huge upgrade for them at the running back position. Does it piss you off how much you pay for your monthly phone bill? Why are you getting frustrated when our partner Mint Mobile has plans as low as $15 a month that give you unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network? Stop getting frustrated with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and go to trymintmobile.com/JTsports and description and pin comment down below to get access to premium wireless for only $15 a month. That's only $15 a month. Switching to Mint is easy. It only takes 15 minutes to do. If you're pissed off with how much you pay for your monthly phone bill, switch to Mint Mobile today and go to trymintmobile.com/JTsports in description and pin comment down below to get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Stop getting upset with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and switch to Mint Mobile today. Okay, so next up, we have the Minnesota Vikings signing edge rusher Jonathan Gard. I gave this a B-. Jonathan Gard is coming off a breakout season. He had 12 sacks last year, and he got injured in 2022, but in 2021, I believe he had 8 sacks. So this definitely is one of those pass rushers that he's on his way to becoming a pretty good Pro Bowl caliber edge rusher. But I just don't know if giving him this kind of contract, 4 years worth $76 million, $42 million guaranteed, is the right value for him. Maybe you could have gotten him for a little bit less. It's just, I'm not saying that this move isn't going to work out, but it's just that, you know, I just don't know just how good Jonathan Gard is, because he hasn't given us 2 consecutive seasons of high-level play. Like, we saw him get 12 sacks last year in Houston, but the year before that, he was injured. And the year before that, he had 8 sacks. It's just, I would like to see a little bit more consistency. I would have liked this signing a lot more if he not just had 12 sacks this past season, but let's say he played in 2022 and he had 7 or 8 sacks, then I would be a little bit more higher on this signing. But just because, like, he had one good season, that doesn't mean that this automatically makes this a great signing. It's like, we need to see consistent production. And that's how signings like this, who look good at the start, end up looking not so great in the end, because you ended up overpaying for a guy who didn't prove to you that he can consistently give you great production as a pass rusher. So Jonathan Gennard is like, I don't think it was a completely bad deal. I'm giving it a B minus. It's just that we don't know how consistent this guy is. So the jury's still out on him. The Titans signed running back Tony Pollard. This is a B plus. They lose Derrick Henry. You replace him with Tony Pollard, who's coming off a down season, but he's still one of the better young backs in the league. He's very young, has a lot of miles left to go, and he can give you about 5-6 highly productive years. He's better in the passing game than what Derrick Henry is. He's way more explosive than what Derrick Henry is, but he's not the tank that King Henry has been for you over the last decade or so, pretty much. But he brings a way different skill set to an offense that isn't going to be anything that Tennessee has ran in the last couple of years. You know, Brian Callahan is a really good offensive mind. He's never called plays before, but he has been getting a lot of, high praise from people coming out of the Bengals organization. Like Joe Burrow has had great things to say about him. Zach Taylor has nothing but great things to say about him. So I trust whatever him and Rand Carthon have in plan. And Tony Pollard, being Derrick Henry's replacement, and you got Tajay Spears as the RB2. They're pretty set at running back. This is a pretty good transition to make, going from Derrick Henry to Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, two younger, cheaper options. Great signing by the Tennessee Titans. B plus for me. The Raiders get an A+++ for signing Christian Wilkins. This was the best free agency signing of day one. I was really surprised when I saw the Raiders pull this off because I wasn't expecting the Raiders to be this active in free agency. If anything, I would have thought that they were going to be one of the teams to go after Kirk Cousins, but you get Christian Wilkins, and now he's on the defensive line that already has Max Crosby lining up alongside of him. If they can get another good edge rusher because Tyree Wilson is already a bust, this could be a really good defense that the Raiders could be building next season. And with all of the talent that they are going to be facing off against at quarterback with Mahomes and Justin Herbert and whoever the Broncos might bring in, you're going to need to overhaul that defense to be able to slow down these high-powered offenses with these high-powered quarterbacks. And getting a guy like Christian Wilkins, who's coming off the best year of his career. He had a career-high 9 sacks. We know how much of a beast he is against the run. He just makes this defense better in all facets of the game. Your pass rush got better. Your run defense got better. This is the best signing that any team has made up to this point of free agency. If you're a Raiders fan, you have to give your front office a round of applause because the last time I can recall the Raiders making this big of a signing on defense and free agency, it was like a decade and some change ago when they signed that cornerback, Nnamdi Asomugha. Y'all remember him? Real big throwback player. Look up Nnamdi Asomugha, man. He was part of that, what was supposed to be the Dream Team Philadelphia Eagles. If you don't know what the Dream Team Eagles squad was, then, go back and do a little bit of homework on it. Really disappointing that team didn't live up to expectations, but Nnamdi Asomugha was, a really big name that the Eagles have gotten, that the Raiders have gotten, and ever since that signing, they haven't really made a lot of big moves on free agency in terms of bringing in superstar-like talent like a Christian Wilkins. This is a great pickup for Las Vegas. They also signed Gardner Minshew. Now, unlike the Christian Wilkins signing, I hated this signing. I gave it a C-. I was really close to giving it a D+ because what the hell are you going to do with Gardner Minshew? Now, I get it. If your plan is to trade up for a quarterback in this year's draft, trade up to the top 3 to get, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, or Drake May, whoever, I understand Gardner Minshew being a really good bridge quarterback for you. But if you're trying to make it to the playoffs this year and you're trying to contend for the AFC West, bro, Gardner Minshew is not going to get you anywhere. You're going to be better than the Broncos, but you're not going to be competing with the Chargers or the Denver Broncos. And who cares if you beat Kansas City with Aiden O'Connell not throwing any passes after the first quarter on Christmas, bro? Like, you're not going to do that shit again. That the Kansas City Chiefs won the damn Super Bowl, man. They're going to be a way better team next season than what they were last season. So let's not try. Why are we getting so high on regular season wins? Could you beat Kansas City in the playoffs with Aiden O'Connell? Hell no. So what makes you think that you're going to be able to beat a team like Kansas City or any team in the AFC in the postseason that has a high-end quarterback with Gardner Minshew? Gardner Minshew was the reason Indianapolis didn't make it to the postseason last year. Like, yeah, he kept them alive in the playoff hunt when Anthony Richardson ran down, but they won a lot of games in spite of Gardner Minshew. You know, he throws a lot of YOLO balls that gets a lot of wide receivers fucked up. You saw what happened to Michael Pittman when he got destroyed by DeMonte Casey. So it's just, I don't know what the Raiders are trying to do at quarterback. To me, you were better off just sticking with Aiden O'Connell, seeing what he does. If you need a backup, it's just, I don't understand giving a guy like Gardner Minshew a 2-year, $25 million deal to possibly be, your starting QB for the next 2 years, because you might not be able to even draft a quarterback this year because you might not even be able to trade up. It's just, I don't like this decision. If you're the Raiders and you're really trying to be relevant in the AFC and trying to compete for this division, Gardner Minshew isn't the answer. So C- grade for this signing. The New York Giants. A lot of fans are upset about them not retaining Saquon Barkley, allowing him to disgustingly sign with the Philadelphia Eagles. Yuck! But, I mean, at least you finally are making strides to improve the offensive line, which has been bad for 7 years, damn near it feels like. Jon Runyan Jr. was a great pickup by the Giants. I talked about how great of a signing Christian Wilkins was. Well, this signing probably was the second best signing of day one of free agency. He was really good for the Packers last season. He's young. He provides tons of upside, and he still has a lot of room to improve. And if you look at how he played last year, if he continues to build on that, he could be one of the best interior offensive linemen in the National Football League. You got Andrew Thomas at left tackle. A lot of people seem to forget how good Andrew Thomas is. We don't know what the hell is going to happen with Evan Neal. I feel like at this point you just have to kick him to the curb. If he doesn't want to play guard, cool, trade him somewhere else. But you can't allow Evan Neal to take another snap at right tackle for this organization again, because you're going to end up getting whoever you have back there at quarterback next season killed with him blocking. Like, this dude probably should be working at McDonald's other than starting as your right tackle. So the New York Giants, I like the signing of Jon Runyan Jr., A- for me. Now, this next signing they made, signing Devin Singletary, was one of the worst, if not the worst, signing of day one. And I love Devin Singletary. Shout out to him. I always support my fellow Florida Atlantic Owls, but he had a decent season last year with Houston, but it was nothing to write home about. He's a good RB2, maybe RB3, but if you're signing him to be your replacement for Saquon Barkley, then you just got tremendously worse at running back. I mean, you downgraded in the worst way possible. Devin Singletary is nice. You feel me? He's a good RB2, but asking him to take up the mantle of Saquon Barkley to fill his shoes, like, good luck with that. And Houston didn't have a good offensive line. Devin Singletary is one of those running backs that if you don't have a good offensive line, you're not really going to get too much juice out of him. He doesn't really bring anything in the passing game neither. So, I hated this signing. It's a D+. You Giants fans are probably going to get upset with it, but you could have spent money elsewhere. The Jaguars, they had a terrible free agency signing by signing Gabe Davis. Like, what the hell? You might as well have just kept Calvin Ridley. And I get it that Gabe Davis was asking for a lot less than Calvin Ridley, 3-year deal, $39 million plus $11 million signing bonus. But Gabe Davis is the best, most inconsistent wide receiver in the NFL. When Gabe Davis shows up, he's a threat to go off for 2 touchdowns and 150 yards. But you only get like 3 or 4 of those games out of Gabe Davis every season. Outside of those 4 games, you get a lot of mid or, not even, impactful performances out of him. And the Jaguars really need a number 1 wide receiver. Gabe Davis doesn't bring a number one option to Jacksonville. All he brings is a number 2 wide receiver in a room with nothing but number 2 wide receivers. You already have Zay Jones, who's a number 3 wide receiver 4, and you got Christian Kirk, who's like a good slot, a good wide receiver 2 option for you. But Gabe Davis, he just makes this wide receiving core, it's not bad, but it still isn't that improved. In a sense, you kind of downgraded going from Calvin Ridley to Gabe Davis, because Gabe Davis isn't on the same level as Calvin Ridley. You can say what you want to about Calvin Ridley not being that great, but he's still a pretty good option. Gabe Davis is a solid option. So Jacksonville, I give this a D- grade. They could have did so much better. You might as well have just brought back Calvin Ridley. Now, I do like the signing of Darnell Savage that the Jaguars made. Darnell Savage is definitely going to be a big boost to that secondary, which got absolutely destroyed during the back half of last year. That was another reason why they had that catastrophic fall off. And Darnell Savage, I think that he's pretty good against the pass, against the run. He's what you expect out of a safety. He may miss a couple of tackles here and there, but definitely is the definition of a solid starting safety in this league. And you signed him to a 3-year deal. We don't really know the amount, but I'm figuring it wasn't nothing that really broke the bank. And you pair him up with, you're going to have potentially Tyson Campbell coming back at 110%. You got to find another cornerback, but you got a new defensive coordinator who was really good with the Falcons last season, his first year calling plays on that side of the ball. And I really am high on him and what he can do with this Jags defense, especially if they can lock up Josh Allen long term. You got to work on improving that back end, though. And Darnell Savage is definitely going to be a big a big time signing for Jacksonville. And I think he's going to have a tremendous impact next season on that secondary. The Rams signed interior offensive lineman Jonah Jackson. He was playing for the Detroit Lions last year. They also re-signed recently offensive guard Kevin Dotson, who is coming off the best year of his career. They continue to solidify that offensive line to make sure that they can keep Matthew Stafford upright. I do believe that it's time for them to start searching for their quarterback of the future, but Matthew Stafford is still playing at a top 10 level. He's like the 6th best quarterback in the league right now, in my opinion. You got to make sure that you prioritize him staying healthy, though, and a good way to make sure he can stay healthy is making sure that you got some good guys blocking for him up front. And Jonah Jackson, you signed him to a 3-year deal worth $51 million. $34 million of that is fully guaranteed. Not too bad for a pretty solid starting caliber offensive guard. Is he elite? Is he great? No, but he's definitely decent enough to get the job done. He's not going to be bad. I don't think he'll be a liability. So I like this signing. I give it a B-. The Philadelphia Eagles signed Bryce Huff. He had 10 sacks last year. He started out as an undrafted free agent by the New York Jets back in 2020, I believe. And a lot of people don't know how the hell this dude went undrafted, because when you watch him play last year for the Jets, this dude was lightning in a bottle, and I didn't even know who the hell he was. I was expecting for Will McDonald to really be the dude who took over on that pass rush in his rookie season. But Bryce Huff, man, the deal that the Philadelphia Eagles signed them to concerns me a little bit. 3 years, $51 million, because we don't know if he's going to be one of those guys that can consistently give you double-digit sacks on a yearly basis. And that's why I'm a little bit on the fence about how much they gave him. Maybe you could have signed him for 3 years, $45 million, but this is still a pretty good signing. Now we're going to see what you're going to do with Hassan Reddick. Are you going to keep him? Or are you going to trade him? But this is pretty decent. If this does end up being a signing that pans out for Philadelphia, and he does continue to give you 10+ sacks on an annual basis, then you just got one of the biggest value signings of free agency. Like normally edge rushers that are giving you 10 sacks a season, they're going for at least 4 years, 120, 130, 150 million a year. Look what Brian Burns just got, and Bryce Young had a Bryce Young. Bryce Huff had a more productive season than what Brian Burns had last year. So I give this a B grade. I would give it a B plus if he just had just a tad bit more production of, 7, 8 sacks. But this is a really good pickup by the Eagles. The Packers signed running back Josh Jacobs. This is a B plus grade for me. Did you get better at running back? I do think that you improved slightly. The gap between Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones, to me, isn't really that wide. Aaron Jones is a top 10 back, and when he was healthy last year, especially during that playoff run for Green Bay, this dude was a damn force on that offense. And when they decided to get rid of him because he didn't want to take a pay cut, it made perfect sense why they signed Josh Jacobs. And initially, I was thinking that they were trying to have the best running back duo in the NFL. So, Josh Jacobs, what are you getting out of him? Well, you're getting somebody who is a really tough and physical runner. He excels after contact. He's a high character guy. And I'm going to love listening to his post-game press conferences after the Green Bay Packers games because he always gives you really authentic answers. And if you're somebody who really loves listening to player interviews, Josh Jacobs is always a really good listen. He tells it how it is. It's no BS. And I just really am a big fan of Josh Jacobs. He's coming off a down year, mainly due to injuries and the fact that, they had no good quarterback play. So even when he was on the field, teams were just stacking the box. Going to Green Bay with Jordan Love and the young arsenal of weapons that they have down there, this further reaffirms my confidence that the Green Bay Packers are at least going to make it to the NFC Championship next year. Because with a move like this, you got better. You gave him a 4-year deal, $48 million, $12.5 million signing bonus. Like, that's a pretty fair deal for a guy like Josh Jacobs. So I give this a B plus grade for the signing of Josh Jacobs by the Green Bay Packers. The Washington Commanders have been really active in free agency. And they signed center Tyler Biadasz. I give this a C plus grade. I definitely would have loved for them to go after Connor Williams, but I get that Tyler Biadasz started for the Dallas Cowboys, and there is a good amount of familiarity there. It's not a bad signing. It definitely is a huge upgrade from whoever they had starting at center last year. It's just that there were some better options out there that the Commanders could have paid for, and they definitely have the money to do so. So I give this a C plus grade. It's not a bad signing. It's just you could have did a little bit better. And when you can do better, you do better. They also signed defensive lineman Dorrance Armstrong. I give this a B grade. Dorrance Armstrong isn't one of those dudes that's going to give you 10 sacks every single season, but he's at least going to be effective where he gives you 6, 7, maybe 8, 9 sacks at the high end at most. But for what they're paying him, for what he did with the Dallas Cowboys, 3 years, $45 million, I don't think that's too bad for getting a guy that you're going to get somewhere between 6, 9 sacks a year. And the Washington Commanders trading away Montez Sweat and Chase Young, this definitely is going to be a really good replacement for one of those two guys, whichever side he ends up lining up at, rather that's right side, left side of the D-line. It's just going to be a really good pickup for a team that we didn't really know how they were going to figure out the next answer or the next solution to figuring out how to get that pass rush going again. But Dorrance Armstrong, is he going to be somebody that can give you Pro Bowl production? Maybe he gives you 1 or 2 Pro Bowl years, but this is a decent signing. I give it a B. The Commanders also took linebacker Frankie Louisville in free agency. He's getting one of the best deals that any team has made in free agency. 3 years, $30 million. That is a great value contract for a guy like Frankie Louisville, who has played some of his best football over the last 2 years down in Charlotte. I mean, he was the heart and soul of that Carolina Panthers defense. Brian Burns may have been their best player, but Frankie Louisville was the unquestioned leader of that defense, man. And he made a lot of big plays for the Panthers, not just in the run game, but in the passing game as well. He's pretty decent in coverage. You're getting a jack-of-all-trades linebacker for a really fair free agency market value. Like, I thought that Frankie Louisville was going to break the bank And for him to just be getting $30 million over 3 years, I definitely feel he deserves a lot more than that. He definitely could have gotten 40 or maybe even 50 million a year, because if you watch Carolina the last couple of years, this dude is all over the place. You can't watch a single Panthers game and not at least see Franco Louisville make at least 2 or 3 big impactful plays that impacted the game in Carolina's favor. So I love this signing. This is definitely one of the best free agency signings of day one, getting Franco Louisville. And overall, this was a really active day in free agency for the Washington Commanders, who have a lot of money to spend because they have some of the most cap space available in free agency. Now, next up, we're going with, hold up. Now, the Carolina Panthers made a really big splash when they paid offensive guard Robert Hunt, who played for the Miami Dolphins, a 5-year deal worth $100 million. And everybody was saying, that's a lot for an offensive guard. But he was the Miami Dolphins' best offensive lineman last year. And even though they run an offense that's predicated on getting the ball out fast, so does Dave Canales. So it's a perfect scheme fit. You need to improve the offensive line. Your offensive tackle positions aren't too bad. Akim Ekwonu, I still believe that he can be saved. He did have a really good rookie season, so the promise is still there. It's just you need the proper coaching, and he definitely took a step back compared to how he played under Steve Wilkes when he was the interim head coach. But mainly, you just need to focus on your interior. And getting Robert Hunt is going to solidify one of those offensive guard spots. You also recently signed Damian Lewis not too long ago, just didn't have enough time to make a graphic for him. But that's also another big upgrade for you on the offensive line. So your offensive line got tremendously better with just 2 big signings. Now, who is going to be starting for you at center? Are you going to address that in free agency? Or are you going to sign Connor Williams? Or are you going to draft one in the draft this year? We'll see how they go about addressing that. And lastly, we have the Washington Commanders again signing another player in free agency, running back Austin Ekeler. I gave this a C+ grade. Austin Ekeler, at this point in his career, like, all he really is a good threat catching the ball out of the backfield, and he is really good in the passing game, but he doesn't really give you that much on the ground anymore. You know, he's really small. He's starting to regress a lot, and he doesn't really have top-end speed. Not really the most agile guy anymore. But if you're asking him to be your RB2 behind a Brian Robinson and being a complimentary back, he can be decent. And you aren't paying him that much, just a 2-year deal worth $11.4 million. But it is one of those moves that you just look at and you just keep on scrolling, and you probably forget about it in the next couple of minutes because of everything else that's going on. But these are my grades for some of the most notable signings during day one of free agency. Give me your grades for these signings down in the comment section down below. What grades do you agree with? Which ones do you disagree with? I'm eager to hear your guys' thoughts.